When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak.
Yeah.
Because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed.
Okay.
Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. The woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you healed. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." Today I'll be preaching from the topic, what to do once you get through.
Amen.
You may be seated. Sometimes in life, we make it through a storm completely oblivious of what to do once we come out.
Yeah.
I liken this situation to a person who has been incarcerated for an extended period of time. When this person comes out, when they are released from incarceration, they are in most instances unfamiliar with how to reassimilate themselves back into society. They are lost in terms of new trends, new colloquialisms, new laws, and a host of other important things that they should be knowledgeable of. For many of us, 2015 was a year of uncertainty.
Yeah.
The year of the unexpected and the unexplained trials. Some of us lost loved ones, some lost jobs, and others lost hope. Yeah. Things that left us bewildered and baffled, wondering what had we done to deserve this. While preparing this sermon, I heard the Spirit say that I am only preparing you for what you have asked for. Although we are being prepared for what we have asked for, we still sometimes allow circumstances and our storms to consume us and to define who we are, and in many cases overshadow our purpose. We get so caught up in going through that we actually forget to get through.
Yeah.
Through the eyes of the woman with the issue of blood, I hope to offer those of you going through on what to do once you actually get through. Growing up, I knew a boy that went through things that were unexplainable, and to many, his circumstances were not things that a child should have experienced. One of the things that stand out to me most about this young man was his abuse. This young man was passionate about church and Christ. Each and every free moment that he had, he was reading his Bible, he was going to church, or all of the above. However, while attending his local church, this young man was the victim of abuse. Amen. At the hand of one of the ministers of his church, I apologize. Once this information became public knowledge, the young man was dismissed from the church and asked by the pastor not to return until things had blown over.
Wow.
Just keep in mind that the young man was about 12 or 13 years old, and the minister was in his mid to late 30s. The young man knew that God had a calling on him to do something remarkable, but was unclear of how this would actually factor into the grand scheme of things.
Help us.
Much like the woman with the issue of blood, this young man had to continue to go through in order to get to the promises that God had made him. Once the woman with the issue of blood made it through her storm, she had to get valid understanding of what God had brought her through. Then she had to acknowledge what God had done in her life. And lastly, she had to walk in what God had shown her. And this is where we find ourselves in the text.
Come on, preach it.
Through experience, I have realized that some of us repeat storms because we do not know what to do once we get through. Wow. This morning, I dropped by to tell you what you should do once you get through.
All right.
First, you have to embrace opposition.
All right.
The word embrace is defined as accepting or supporting a belief, theory, or change willingly and enthusiastically. To go through something gives credence or life to the statement that one is moving through and not just sitting idle or dormant in their situation or circumstances. In order to get through a trial effectively and efficiently, we actually have to go through it. And in order to go through a trial effectively and efficiently, we are taught in verse 27 and verse 31 of the book of Mark. The author uses the word crowd twice in similar contexts. Based on my exegesis of the passage, I concluded that the author used the word crowd to conceptualize what was obstructing her path.
Yeah.
Even when Jesus turned in verse 31 to ask who touched him, his disciples responded by asking how were they supposed to know who in this crowd touched him. I feel like someone is still confused. In order to accomplish her objective of touching the hem of his garment and seeking her and getting her healing and being made whole, she had to press her way through a large crowd. She had to actually get through what she was going through. Some of us actually can't actually get through what we're going through because of what the crowd is telling us or what they've said to us. Someone's crowd is telling them that they can't be healed of their brokenness. Someone's crowd is telling them that they don't have what it takes to succeed. Someone's crowd has told them they didn't prosper last year, so you won't prosper in 2016. But I'm here to tell you that 2016 is a year of limitless possibilities. Just like the one with the issue of blood, the young man possessed a certain tenacity and perseverance that propelled him through his crowd. His perseverance and his tenacity propelled him, and it propelled him through the ones that turned their backs on him. It propelled him through the ones that doubted his story. Both the young man and the woman demonstrated a passion to simply get in the presence of the man that was responsible for setting the captives free and healing the broken. And it was through their understanding of who and what Christ is that allowed them to embrace their crowd. The woman with the issue of blood couldn't receive her healing because she had not gone through the crowd. And she had to embrace what opposed her. As I stated before, embrace simply means to accept or to accept willingly or enthusiastically a belief, theory, or change. Some of us need to embrace the disappointment. Some of us, that keeps replaying in our head. Some of us need to embrace that job that we were fired from last year. Some of us need to embrace that the love of our lives left us. Once you embrace your opposition, the lesson becomes more evident. And if you don't embrace it, I promise that you will reface it. I'm not telling you what I've heard. I'm telling you what I know. Point number 2. Embrace the unknown. In verse 33, we read that the woman with the issue of blood, knowing what happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear. This juxtaposition of ideas is symbolic because she knew what had happened to her. She knew that she touched him with his garment. She knew that she felt different afterwards. But she was so overcome with fear because she was afraid of what would happen to her after the fact. Considering she lived with her ailment for at least 12 years, it is safe to assume that the constant bleeding were her norm. Going to doctor after doctor, hearing dismal reports were her norm. Exhausting all her financial resources just to be given a discouraging report were her norm. However, when she finally touched her, look at your neighbor and say, when she finally touched her. When she finally touched her, she knew that she was made whole, not knowing that her healing was in her faith. Her healing was in her embracing what she was scared of. Let me put this into context for you. The young man that I knew back home prayed for healing after his abuse. He prayed for healthy relationships. He prayed for him to see himself the way that Christ saw him. And once he received what he prayed for, he was still fearful of what was on the other side of the storm. Similar to the woman with the issue of blood, the young man from home, although he had been healed of his brokenness, he was scared to walk in his healing. And in many instances, he continued to operate as a broken soul. For many of us, God has answered our prayers for the spouse, but you're scared to let your guard down because of what could go right. God has already ordained a degree and ordered your steps. You just need to walk. You need to walk in what he has ordained. But because you're afraid of embracing your purpose and the fear of the unknown, you're still going through. Sometimes our fear of embracing the unknown comes from a place of comfort. We are taught in Romans 8:31, if God be for us, who can be against us? Knowing this makes it imperative that we embrace the unknown. And this is my third and final point. I will be taking my seat. In 2 Corinthians 3:17, it teaches us where the Spirit is, there is liberty. And going through, once we actually get through, we have to embrace the freedom. Where the Spirit is, one can abide in their truth and embrace their opposition. Where the Spirit is, one can embrace the unknown. Where the Spirit is, you are able to live completely free. In verse 34, Jesus acknowledges the woman and tells her that she is healed and to go and be free. This woman, after 12 years of bleeding, 12 years of being held captive to her illness, 12 years of pain, was finally free and proclaimed to be healed by Christ. While exegeting the text, it occurred to me that her healing and her freedom were not in the crowd, but they were both in her faith. Her faith coupled with her tenacity and her perseverance are what got her to her freedom. Once Christ proclaimed that we have been healed and set free, it is up to us to embrace our freedom. It is through his power and our faith that we are able to embrace freedom and liberty that we are called to abide in. It is through the faith and it is through our faith and his power that we are made whole. It is through his power that Jesus Christ pronounces that the woman with the issue of blood is healed. However, her healing can only be conceptualized through her faith. Similar to the young man that was abused, it was only through the power of Christ that he could be made whole and healed from the trauma he incurred in conjunction with his abuse. Essentially, it is a two-part equation. It is comprised of faith and power. Our faith and his power. One part of deliverance is faith. The other part is power. One part of our progress is faith. One part of our progress is our faith, and the other part is his power. Just like the woman with the issue of blood, the young man was sexually assaulted, had to go through each of these stages once he got through this storm. That young man is me. I had to embrace the opposition from the people in my town that didn't believe the abuse had occurred. I had to be ostracized. I had to embrace being ostracized and taunted. I had to embrace the opposition from my family. I had to embrace the unknown in regard to what would take place after I was asked to leave the church. I had to embrace the unknown as it related to my healing, because after you go through, there's a healing that needs to take place.
Yes, sir.
You have to embrace the unknown and have faith that all things are working together for your good. It was only through my relationship and understanding of who Christ is that I was able to get through my storm. Now it's your turn to trust him. It's your turn to demonstrate your faith by allowing him to be a constant fixture in your life. Amen.